Good afternoon, everybody. I am Andrew Capetta, the Manager of Collection and Exhibition Programs at the Cleveland Museum of Art. I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's Desktop Dialogue. While other guests are joining us, just use this time to familiarize yourself with the chat interface. To join the chat, just enter your name, or really any name that you prefer, and click to agree to the terms of service and the privacy policy. You can use this chat to make comments during the program at any time. If you want to let us know where you're coming from right now, we'd love to see that. We appreciate that greatly. And when you have a question, pop that into the chat as well. We're going to reserve some time at the end of the program, about the last 10 to 15 minutes or so, to answer some of those questions. Also below the screen is a list of web resources that relate to this afternoon's program. So feel free to take a look at those now or later. And lastly, this program is being recorded, so you can watch it later on the CMA website or our YouTube channel. It should be up by sometime tomorrow. So if you need to duck out early, or you want to watch again, or share with a friend who'd be interested, look out for that tomorrow. So for today's program, which is titled An Art Anthology Chapter 3, it is the third of 4 that accompany the CMA exhibition Stories from Storage. This program series has been developed in collaboration with the creative writing organization Literary Cleveland, and the series invites 4 Cleveland area storytellers to offer artful interpretations of select objects on view in the show. So for today's program, the Cleveland-based musical collective Mourning, BLKstar will present 3 audiovisual pieces, what they've titled Soundscapes, that they have made in collaboration with the multimedia artist Jenn Kidd. Inspired by Buddhist and Hindu devotional objects on view in Stories from Storage. There are 3 objects that Mourning, BLKstar look to: Green Tara, Agni, god of fire, and Bodhisattva Manjushri, Bodhisattva of Wisdom. So we're really lucky to have with us 3 members of Mourning, BLKstar, singer-songwriter LaToya Kent, who's a vocalist for the band, writer and musician R.A. Washington, and musician Theresa May, who plays trumpet for the band. Welcome, LaToya. It's great to have you this afternoon.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
R.A., it's great to have you as well. Welcome.
Appreciate it. Thanks for giving us the time.
And Theresa, it's wonderful to have you as well. Welcome.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having us today.
And also joining us is Sonya Rhie Mace, who's the George P. Bickford Curator of Indian and Southeast Asian Art at CMA, who curated the Stories from Storage episode that features the objects that inspired today's program and Mourning, BLKstar's work. Welcome, Sonya.
Hello, so happy to be here and so proud that these breathtakingly talented artists found inspiration in Stories from Storage.
Yeah.
So, Sonya, I thought we'd begin by discussing your section from Stories from Storage, just to give these pieces that we're going to see in a few minutes some context. Your episode is called Green Tara and the Art of Protection, and it centers on the this key work of Tibetan Buddhist devotional painting called a Thangka painting of the deity Green Tara, which is in CMA's collection. So for the Stories from Storage exhibition, right, all the CMA curators were asked to tell a story about your collection area, one that might be left untold, or something that you don't have the opportunity to often tell. Why did you choose this story about this figure now? Why Green Tara?
So I have to say, actually, it's a very personal reason that's the primary reason. And that's because a year ago, when our director asked all of the curators to find a work of art in their collections that can be the centerpiece of one of these galleries in this exhibition of 20 different stories, it was just after my mother had died. And I was lucky enough to be at her bedside and to recite the mantra of Green Tara up until the moment that she passed away. And knowing that she would have seen a vision of Green Tara like this because she knew this Thangka so very, very well. She herself was an art historian and a specialist in Tibetan Buddhist art. So at the moment of death, the mantra of Green Tara is recited so that the visualization of this goddess who actually, you put yourself in the position of this little figure who's actually the donor of the Tantra, and green Tara is proportionately that much larger, that much more powerful, and her job, really, her purpose, is to dispel and take away all fear. You know, she is the embodiment of perfect knowledge and perfect wisdom that takes away the fear of, gosh, the biggest one, death. Because we don't know what is going to happen after death. And so that image of the embodiment of perfect wisdom in the function of being like a mother who loves you and who protects you from any fear. And I thought also that was the perfect kind of image for the moment that we were in last year and we're continuing to cope with at this time. So protection from fear in this embodiment as the form of a young mother, large and powerful and wealthy, with all the resources and know-how to handle any potential fear or danger. Also, in the next slide, it was also a chance to show the Thangka of Green Tara remounted. So we have a wonderful conservator in our Asians painting lab who was trained in Lhasa in Thangka making, traditional Thangka mounting. And so this small painting actually was just in a frame and hung on a wall, but this time we were able to mount it as a scroll and to be able to show the important inscriptions that are on the back. And it's also a chance to be able to display this Tibetan Thangka together with Indian sculptures that also have to do with the art of protection, images of protection, and the embodiments of wisdom. In the galleries themselves, the Tibetan galleries are very far removed from the Indian galleries. So this was a wonderful opportunity to bring the roots of the Green Tara imagery and meaning as seen in Indian art. So I think what we will do now is move on, right? To talk about
that's really wonderful and beautiful, Sonya, that you were able to sort of fuse some professional and personal, right, sort of aspects of your work in this sort of mini exhibition. Yeah, and I think what we're going to do now is Sonya's going to kind of introduce each of the objects that Mourning a Black Star were inspired by, and then turn to a member of the band to then introduce each of the sort of three movements of their sort of audio-visual suite. So, Sonya, I'll leave it to you.
Yes, so this is one of the sculptures that's on view in Green Tara and the Art of Protection in Stories from Storage. It's the god of fire, whose name is Agni. And he's actually, it's great. It's a great piece to start with because the foundation of Vedic Hinduism, from which Buddhism actually reacted and derived in many ways in India, is the sacred fire. It's the central religious activity of early Indo-European and early Vedic Hindu practice. And that sacred fire, the Vedic fire, is here personified in human form, but you see the flames behind his head that indicate his actual nature. And this is a great piece because it shows all the ways that that devotees and yogis interact with the fire, the Vedic fire. And at the very top, I have this detail of the top register where we see sacrificers pouring clarified butter, ghee, into the sacred fire. That was one of the most common oblations or sacrifices made together with many rituals. So this concept of sacrifice is absolutely fundamental to this religious practice. In the next register, we see seated teachers, rishis, who are emaciated. They're seated on stools with dreadlocks piled up on their heads, and they're teaching all the sacred knowledge they've learned through practice around the sacred fire to their disciples. In the next level, we see yogis who are performing the acts of heart yoga. I think it's the one just before this, Jeff, where we see these yogic practices, there we go, of these people holding uncomfortable positions. This is the original hot yoga, where you sit or stand by the fire in a disciplined posture or stance and hold it for a long, long time. Nowadays, I think most of us who practice yoga, we flow from one posture to another quite rapidly. But early yogis from 1500 years ago, when this sculpture was made, they would take a position and hold it for days, weeks, months, years. And the longer you hold it, the more tejas or yogic fire, internal fire you generate. And that brings you closer and closer to the powers of a god. And finally, on the bottom there, we see this little animal behind the god of fire, and he's a goat. It's a sacrificial animal par excellence, and he's the mount or the vehicle for Agni. And on either side, at the edges, are these fascinating goat-headed divinities who are they're kind of the minions of Agni, and they are controlled by Agni. And what they are in charge of is our embryos and fetuses and newly born infants. They both can cause a miscarriage or prevent a miscarriage, cause infant death or prevent infant death. They themselves are neither good nor evil, sort of just like fire. You know, fire can be horribly destructive and dangerous, but also life-affirming and essential for life and communication and togetherness. But so what we see actually under the left hand of Agni is a male figure with his hands pressed together in a devotional mudra, praying to Agni, giving him the sacrifices, learning from his rishis, feeding him so much butter he has this great big belly. But this devotee is praying to him, and he's probably a father praying for or made the sculpture, hoping that Agni will be so pleased by this that he will control these goat-headed divinities and make sure that no miscarriage takes place. So this universal anxieties and fears about the safety of pregnancy and newborns and mothers is actually a strain that runs through many objects in the exhibition. So that's what this sculpture is about. And now I'll turn it over to Theresa, who's going to introduce the theme of fire from the first movement of the soundscape that Mourning a BLKstar has produced for us.
Yeah, so our first movement is based off of Agni's god of fire. It's featuring James Long's, and I will just read the chorus. The chorus reads, "This is how it starts. Just a tiny spark, never mean no harm. Run away, run away."
This is how I start. This is how I start. Never mean no harm. This is how I start. Just a kiss, just a little kiss, scorch on their lips. Run away, we all wanna live. This is how it starts. This is how it starts. This is how it starts, just a tiny spark, never mean no harm. Run away, run away, run away. This is how it starts.
And then from the idea of fire, which is actually one of the 8 perils from which Green Tara protects her devotees and her followers, we move to protection from the dangers of the forest. And Green Tara, she protects from all of these things. And actually the 8 perils are each represented in these little insets on the pillarets on either side of her shrine. We see the details some details on the right. And one of them is the peril of poisonous snakes. So she's protecting her devotee from him there. But even just more generally, her shrine in this Thangka is set in a forest. And typically in pre-modern times, when this painting was made, the forest was the site of dangers and fears. It was dark, especially the forest at night. You can't see anything. You hear a sound, or you see movement maybe, or you sense a movement, and you don't know what it is. And what she does is she's this light of wisdom who illuminates the forest and makes you and transforms this place of fear and danger into a place of beauty and wonder. And all of these trees, they're bearing fruit and flowers. Flowers are drifting down from the sky. And each one of these trees is actually a tree of enlightenment, under which a Buddha of the past has actually reached enlightenment. And the one under which she sits is a particularly special tree because instead of bearing fruit or flowers, it bears jewels. And the jewel tree is a wish-fulfilling tree. So it's this place of wonder and the transformative power of faith in wisdom and knowledge, and pure wisdom and knowledge that alleviates and dispels fear and transforms danger into beauty. And on the back of the Thangka, in the next slide, we're able now to see the inscriptions that were written at the same time when Green Tara was painted. There are mantras that enliven each of the figures on the front, especially Green Tara and the devotee, to bring their living presence into the painting itself. This is what's special about a Thangka. They're ritually enlivened with the presence of the figures. And on the back, there's a prayer, mentioning tolerance, but also the mantra of Green Tara, which has the same effect and the same power as seeing or visualizing her form. And we have an infrared photograph of her mantra, Om Tare Tare Tare, which is what I was reciting to my mother as the last words she heard. And I think I was so touched actually when RA asked me to record that mantra, and they've included it in the next selection. And it's so wonderful that Latoya, who's going to jump in right now to introduce the next piece, doula, so she understands the importance of protecting the embryo and the newborn and the fetus and the mother, and also understands many Sanskrit mantras. So thank you, Latoya.
Oh, I'm so mesmerized by your storytelling. I'm like in a beautiful place with this program. So the next soundscape was inspired by Green Tara. And as Sonya stated, she does the bass of the track, and she is doing the Green Tara mantra. And over that, I am reciting the Gayatri. And the Gayatri is a universal mantra, but it is a Hindu mantra. And it translates to, we meditate on the glory of that being who created the universe. May she enlighten our minds.
Om Bhurбhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat Om Bhurбhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat Om Bhurбhuvah swaha tatsaviturvarenyam bargo devasya dhimai dhiyo yo na prachodayat. Om Bhurбhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om Bhurбhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om Bhurбhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na Prachodayat. Om Shanti, 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 Shanti.
So beautiful. And ending on that note of peace, which is extraordinary. The next piece and the third, and I am sorry to be coming to the last, is our Bodhisattva of Wisdom, Manjushri. Now, a Bodhisattva is a little different from Green Tara. So Green Tara is like an embodiment of an idea. A Bodhisattva is a being who has elected to remain within the cycles of birth and death and to manifest in one form or another that may or may not be recognizable as in order to try to help all beings first. So Manjushri and others, they sort of hold back that last bit of on the path to full enlightenment so that they're sure that everybody else can get to enlightenment first. So it's that compassion to bring forward wisdom into the world. And Manjushri here is seated on a lion, so you know that is Manjushri, but so much about him has to do with the purification of the mind through wisdom and knowledge. So he sits on a lotus flower. There's a lotus flower under his foot. He holds lotus flowers in both arms, and the book of wisdom of the Buddha is blossoming on one of the lotus flowers. And the lotus flower is a water flower. And so the lotus actually is a symbol of the waters, life-giving waters, and things grow because of water. And so one's practice, one's insight, which is also designated by the third eye in the forehead, that's marked in the forehead of Manjushri, that your practice will be productive, just like when it's like a lotus flower growing in the waters. And also behind on the throne, there are crocodile creatures that also reference these purifying waters. And even behind the head of Manjushri, the effulgence of his halo is a full-blown lotus flower. So this interchangeability where water is balanced by fire, so the flames of the halo are on the outside, the lotus flower is on the inside, brings us full circle to the third movement that R.A. will introduce to us.
Yeah, and for the third movement, we wanted to kind of sum up the previous movements, but also embody this object. And so there's a very deliberate duet happening between Theresa's trumpet and the lead vocal with Kyle Kidd. One representing the lotus flower and the other one representing the figure. So hope you enjoy the visuals.
Keep us safe in the arms. Keep us safe in the arms. Swallow so. The atmosphere rise. Carry us to our true selves, to our true selves, to our true selves. Brilliant instruction.
Wow. Thank you, everybody. Every time I look at these, I'm moved each time, and I feel like I learn as much about these works from Sonya as much equivalently with the videos, if that makes sense, these audiovisual pieces. And Theresa, I'd like to start with asking you why were Mourning a Black Star drawn to this particular set of objects? Like, what was it about them? Each storyteller was sort of had this checklist of over 300 works, and what was it about these three that spoke to all of you?
Yeah, so in the one Zoom meeting where you showed us the many pieces of arts and drawings and sculptures and pieces, I was just first drawn to the Art of Protection collection. And I think it's just because of like maybe the human experience being attracted to like things or like beings. And as a band, we are pretty spiritual, and we do a lot of our art, or if not all of our art, based on our feelings and emotions. And, Toya being a person who does yoga and teaches yoga, and all of us being spiritual, like we're the band that comes to a gig with incense. And we need that atmosphere. So I was just automatically drawn to these, this collection, Sonya's collection, and in general these three. I don't know if I have a specific reason other than I was just drawn to them because of how I am and how our band works.
No, that's wonderful to hear. Toy and Ari, do you have anything to follow up from Theresa in regards to that?
So after no.
I don't, but you may.
After the pieces were picked and they were brought to the band, for me, it was really exciting to figure out how we were going to interpret these pieces into music. After we decided like what we were going to do and it started to come together, then we thought about having a visual scape, something visual to attach to the music. And Jenn Kidd is a person that we've been working with artistically for some years. And she was getting into like really working with visuals. And so when we asked her, she jumped on board, and it came out so beautifully the visual mixed with the sounds. So it's been a beautiful ride.
No, it's really really impressive. Actually, all right, just into the conversation too. Could you talk more about how maybe the band worked together? It's interesting to hear. I think about most of the folks we've worked with in this series have been singular artists, right? Where it's up to them. But how do you work as a collective? And how did you work on this project as a collective?
With any project that we're doing, we kind of work the same way. We break up into silos, and it usually starts with the singers kind of figuring out with me like what we're gonna sing about and what's speaking to us in as far as the lyric and maybe the timbre of a song, and then Theresa and William and Pete and Dante add the structure and the melodies and the counter melodies, and then we put it back together as a group. And I just really feel like this particular project was kind of imbued with Sonya's feelings about these objects, and we could sense it, and there was an instant like feeling of love and respect to Sonya for this collection. Like we felt connected to her, and so we asked her to lend her voice to the Green Tara piece. And I just feel like if anything, the pandemic has shown us the ways in which we can connect across the electronics and the devices that are also impacting us in our humanity in these kind of negative ways. We can also take those and tether ourselves and teleport ourselves to each other and be connected. So it just has a really nice balance in the lessons that we're learning as a band and how we collaborate in the future. And just like a huge bag of goodwill and energy amongst us for having been in the room as long as we have together before we couldn't gather like everyone else. I feel like we gathered so much before the pandemic that we were able to build on that storage.
If I could add, for this process in particular, the way that we created this is RA and the vocals first laid down their parts. So within that, the vocalist already established the melodies and the lyrics, and then that file was then sent to Pete Sadek, who is the guitar player and keys, and I think he also added some percussion. And then that file was then sent to me, and I feel that when we are creating, everything affects you. So I asked all the vocalists to send me their lyrics so I could read through them before I recorded my part for each of the movements. And I did this just like we would if we were together in a big room. I didn't plan out anything or write out anything. I read the lyrics, I listened to it a couple times, and I just recorded. And so in doing it that way, I just was able to play whatever I was feeling in that moment, which made it really, really special. And I think that's why it sounds like it sounds. We were able to create kind of exactly how we create in person, even though we're, in our own spaces. It's very, very cool.
Yes.
I just wanted to thank you, Theresa. That's wonderful to hear that, because I think it's so, interesting to hear about artistic processes, right? Especially, as I said, like how you work as a group, especially as you also were saying, Ari, in this distant way, right? I want to draw Sonya into the conversation as well, which, Ari, I think you kind of, gestured at that as well. But Sonya, what did these three works draw out for you in these works? You know these works from through an art historical lens, and also I understand as well now through a very personal lens as well, right? Did you see them in new ways through these three pieces?
I was actually amazed at what Mourning a Black Star was able to tease out just viscerally. I did not give them an art history lesson, at all before the soundscapes were created, and just to see how they just called on these three elements of fire, the wood of the forest, and water, and brought them forward in ways that were just right on and just spoke to me about the universality of many of these concepts, the concept of protection and the dualities between both the danger and the protective quality of all of these elements of fire, the forest, and water. And that if we have the right way to understand them, to have the knowledge about them and the creative talent, they can be transformed into something so beautiful that everyone can understand, even if you don't speak Tibetan or even if you aren't versed in ancient Vedic Hinduism. I'm here in Cleveland with this incredible collection made for people who lived so long ago and so far away. And it's always my hope that they are meaningful to anybody now, as long as we're open to it and can view them with more and more understanding and appreciation. So bravo. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, no, it's it is impressive. Did any member of Mourning a Black Star, that sort of elemental connection, was that something that you saw in those works and you wanted to draw out, or was that more, I don't want to say, was that just something that borne out in the process? I think that's a really great thing to notice.
The band, the actual Mourning a Black Star to us is matrilineal. It's a matriarch that we're invested in as individuals, and then so it has a lot of the power that Theresa and Latoya are bringing to the table inside of it, and we didn't really think, I don't think we communicated with each other what we wanted to do at all. We kind of just feel our way, and if you know us as individuals, we're not necessarily the kind of people that do that in all aspects of life, where we just feel our way. But with this, it seems that that's the way that we go about it. And so our artistic understandings and expertises don't enter into the mix so much. And I feel like that's something to really be proud of and protect. Something that I really am growing to understand and appreciate more as I get a little more gray.
Now, I want to be conscious of our audience, so it might have some questions, and already some are rolling in. So I'll make sure to address them to, an individual member, if that's okay, just to, so we can keep it moving.
Yeah.
The first is I think is a very simple question for Sonya, and that was a question from Vikram Dogra about the language on the back of the Tanka painting. What language was that? Or is that?
Sanskrit. Hello, Dr. Dogra. The mantras are in Sanskrit, but written in Tibetan script. The prayer at the end is written in the Tibetan language, but also in Tibetan script. So same script, two different languages.
Awesome. Thank you for that. There's some wonderful comments in here, which I think we've, posted into, but Sue has a question, and maybe Latoya, I'll just address this to you just in terms of, keeping things moving and even. Is this something that you as the band usually do, create videos with music inspired by art? If yes, are there other art pieces that you've used? Or maybe I'll just expand other sort of sources of creativity.
We created a project during COVID, during the quarantine, called The Residencies, and we spanned it over 5 episodes, and it had some visual artistic qualities to it, overlays, as well as our music videos. but to be inspired by something like what we did with the museum, I would say it was our first time doing something like that. But in it, I feel that we would love to do something like this again. It brought out a different level of creativity because it was associated with an object and a history, and being able to kind of like embed our energy and emotions and thoughts and perspectives around a specific piece of art was very like, it opened us up in a different way.
That's
Gave us a
wonderful
focus.
to hear.
Yes.
That's really great to hear. Actually, you brought the residencies, and I think we have some images from that. Theresa, would you care, while we just kind of scroll through them, what were the residencies and how did that work? I mean, you were faced with this challenge of the pandemic and not being able to connect with audiences. So how did you sort of solve that problem?
Yeah, we received a grant. It was in last summer, I believe. Everything is a blur with time these days. We received a grant from Spaces, and with the grant, we were able to produce whatever art we wanted. And we decided to produce the residencies and create the residencies, which is a docuseries, and it documents the band. There are bits of performances and also bits of information about how we started and just the story of our band. And we chose different venues, Grog Shop, Musica, where Jenn works whenever live music is a thing again. Where else did we? Beachland, what am I missing? And Mayhaws. So we recorded kind of mini concert series at each of the venues. I'm sorry, say it again.
AV Club.
AV Club,
Oh yes,
yeah.
AV Club. So we recorded concerts and short interviews at each of the venues and turned it into a docuseries.
That's fantastic. And that's also, I think, that's still accessible to audiences. I think if we go to your website, which we should have that information below. Right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, you can still watch all 5, and shout out to the directors of it, Rafik Roberts and Nat Cherry, for making sure that we gave the best effort that we could visually to do it.
Yes.
And I have one last question, maybe quickly, that's based on a comment from one of our, Joanne Havala, who was really impressed with the seamlessness of everything, but would love to watch and hear all 3 segments in a continuous flow too. I mean, these are your artistic objects and products. Do you see another life for the piece that you did here?
Yeah, we're gonna put it on our Patreon. So we invite anyone who wants to support our collective, 8 individuals trying to work together from a spirit place. You can visit our Patreon, and you can get there by just going to our website at mourningablackstar.com. mourningablkstar.com. And you can find all the links to all that kind of stuff. So we'll put it there for our patrons and for the people that are riding this spaceship with us. And hopefully we'll get a chance to do other kind of visual collaborations in the future.
Yes.
Sure. Awesome. Well, I think we should wrap up here, but I want to thank everyone out there for joining us this afternoon, and thank you, Theresa, Latoya, and RA for Mourning a Black Star. Thank you for your insight, your hard work, and these beautiful works, these audiovisual pieces. And thank you, Sonya, as well, for being an amazing partner for this whole project.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing us together.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.
No problem. Pleasure. My pleasure.
Thanks to the tech team too for making this such a seamless and painless endeavor.
They're amazing. So everyone out there, I'll ask you, I'm just going to tell you, please join us in 2 weeks on Wednesday, May 5th at noon for the 4th and last chapter in this series, An Art Anthology. Poet Camden Hilliard is going to present a new work titled Poem in One Line, developed in dialogue with Kara Walker's monumental collage drawing, The Republic of New Africa at a Crossroads, which is on view in Stories from Storage. Hilliard and curator Kijo Lee are going to discuss the histories that Walker's work unearths and the new understandings that Hilliard's poem reveals. It should be a really amazing conversation, and Cam is a really fascinating and interesting and powerful poet. It's going to be a wonderful performance as well of the poem. So find out more about this and other upcoming programs at cma.org. And if you'd like to explore more of the work in our collection, visit CMA Collection Online. And lastly, if we didn't get to any of your questions during the program, or if you have more, you can always go to our Lens Ask on the CMA website, and someone will get back to you with an answer. Links for these and more information, especially about Mourning a Black Star and Stories from Storage, are below. So thanks everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. Stay well.